So apparently, piracy is back, and I'm not talking about the Jack Sparrow kind. I mean people proudly posting about torrenting movies, shows, and music again, like it's some kind of moral rebellion against streaming services. Well, mostly it's actually been videos I've seen where they're talking about why it's making a comeback, which basically boils down to too many streaming services, all of them too expensive, and streaming services disappearing shows like the Disney Plus Willow series, which personally, I don't think that's a huge loss to us as a culture. I'm gonna be honest, I watched it, like I said, it was no real loss to society. But here's the thing, while I get the frustration with streaming services and too many of them, piracy is not the solution. But before I get into all that, be sure to give this video a like, comment what you think along the way, subscribe for cultural commentary and rants from a man caught between generations, and last but certainly not least, feel free to join me at the Zillennial Nexus Point Discord. Link will be in the description below. But let's be honest, according to the videos that I have seen talking about piracy's comeback, people are doing this because streaming turned into the very thing it swore to destroy with cable. Back in the early Netflix days, it was just one subscription, all the shows. Well, whatever they could get licensed to them, which felt like enough, but objectively speaking, I doubt it was 100% of every movie and show ever made. But today you've got Disney Plus, Max, Paramount Plus, Peacock, Hulu, Netflix, Prime Video, and every studio pulling their stuff from each other's platforms. You need a spreadsheet just to know what show lives where if you use all of these services. So I get that the streaming service setup is frustrating and expensive. And after finding out about the Netflix deal for Warner Brothers, I have begun to realize that streaming services really are just ransomware because you have to keep paying a monthly fee just to access the movies and shows that you enjoy, even if you don't actually watch them. And you're forced to have access to a bunch of other garbage you might not care about. Whereas on the digital stores, at the very least, you can pay X amount of dollars one time for a specific movie or a specific TV show, and you have indefinite access barring extraordinary circumstances I've talked about in past videos. But turning to piracy is not fighting the system, it's just breaking the law, because that's what it is, and pretending that it makes you a freedom fighter. Yeah, some might say nobody's enforcing it, but like Tim Pool said about the TikTok ban and the insurance companies for the app stores, prohibiting them from putting it back up initially when Trump was like, we're not going to enforce this law. The insurance companies were like, oh, heck no, you can't do that. Because what if the president changes his mind? Or what if the next president decides to actually enforce the law? And keep in mind, this TikTok ban was passed by Congress, signed by President Biden, and upheld unanimously by the Supreme Court. So even if the current president doesn't enforce it now, the next one could. And just like with piracy, the laws are there. Maybe it's more difficult to enforce. Maybe it's not really being enforced, but it's a law on paper. As I always say, if it's against the law on paper, don't do it. And regardless of that, piracy is still stealing. I'm sorry, it is. Saying that it's a victimless crime is like saying shoplifting doesn't hurt anyone because it's a big company. If it happens often enough, stores close, or if they remain open, they turn into dystopian fortresses of you have to ask an employee to unlock a shelf so that you can get what you came for. But my point is, piracy is the same logic because if everyone stops paying for content, studios stop funding projects, or they make up the difference by jacking up the price of the streaming services, and then it's actually a self-fulfilling prophecy. To be clear, this is not about defending corporations. It's about sustaining creativity and hopefully encouraging the prices to either stay where they are or maybe hopefully come down by way of people actually paying into the system. Because if they have more people that they can get money out of, they won't charge as much. Like Tim Pool says, many hands make light work. And hey, they have to make their money somehow. Though, personally, what I'm hoping for with the Netflix Warner Brothers deal potentially being blocked is that someone will look into the business model of the streaming services being directly tied to the companies that produce the movies and shows, and they'll be like, hang on, wait a minute. This is a monopoly. You have to separate these companies. Just like back in the 40s, believe it or not, movie studios used to own movie theaters. Like you would have to go to a Warner Brothers theater specifically to see a Warner Brothers movie sometimes. But then the government was like, no, you can't do that. That's a monopoly. And so the companies were separated. The movie theaters were a separate entity from the studios, and unfortunately, we're in the same boat now where the streaming services are owned directly by the studio, but I digress. Little history lesson there for you. I also want to talk about the piracy sites themselves because in some of the videos that I've seen talking about how it's making a comeback, they look clean with a lack of ads, pop-ups, just free movies. But as Midnight's Edge always points out in their NordVPN ad reads, sites like these expose your device to malware. That's the trade-off. They look legit until they aren't. And honestly, I have no sympathy for you if your device gets bricked by malware from one of these sites because you made your choice. Now you have to accept the consequences. But if you want your device to actually not get bricked, my advice would be find an alternative in the form of building your digital library. Instead of stealing, which is what piracy is, just pay a one-time cost for indefinite access to what you enjoy. That's why I've built a digital library through Apple's store, formerly known as iTunes. A lot of the time, I can buy movies on sale for $5, $8, or $10 and have indefinite access on my Apple account. For example, last month I spent $5 on It's a Wonderful Life, the digital copy, so I now have indefinite access to it. Last time I watched it was on Prime Video in 2021. I don't know if it's available to watch on Prime Video right now, and I don't care. For all I know, it's probably moved somewhere else. But what does it matter? I'm not going to deal with a streaming service. I'm going to pay that $5 for indefinite access because it's a really good movie. You should watch it. Another example, I spent $8 to get The Holdovers digitally. Previously, I watched it on Prime Video last year when it was available there because the way Focus Features and Universal releases work are about 4 months after the theatrical release, they get released on Peacock. After that, 4 months later, they move to Prime Video for live action and Netflix for animated for about 10 months, I think it is. But then eventually they move back to Peacock. And last year on Mario Day, or maybe it was, no, it was this year. I saw the Mario movie was on Prime Video about 2 years after its original theatrical release, where it came out in April of 2023, came to Peacock in August 2023, and then moved to Netflix in December, where it remained until at some point and moved back to Peacock, I think, and then it was on Prime Video. I don't know where it is now, and I don't care because I bought it digitally, so I have indefinite access on my Apple account. The point I'm trying to make here is I control when I pay, and I'm not stuck in a monthly subscription loop, aka the content is not being held hostage. And yes, that is a very accurate term for it. Because think about it, you have to pay a recurring ransom, which I think is a better description for these subscription fees. And if you don't pay, you don't get access. The difference between a streaming service and a digital purchase or buying a DVD or Blu-ray is that it's a sale of a product for a one-time purchase. That's a different story, but once you make the purchase, you have indefinite access as long as the disc works, and you have indefinite access on your digital library account, Apple, Amazon, or otherwise. Fandango at home is another one. But the point is, I can rewatch the Super Mario Brothers movie every Mario Day without having to be subscribed to Netflix like I was for Mario Day 2024, or to Prime Video like I was for Mario Day 2025, although I'd already bought it digitally by then, so it didn't matter. And that's the freedom of a digital library. It's just reliable access to what you actually care about and supporting the artists behind it. You're supporting the actual creatives and you are telling the studio, the distributor, that this is what is good, this is what's doing well, make more like this. Because that's one of the things about capitalism that I've recently learned about is it's a way for the market to tell the producers what they should be making. So let's use movies as an example. If you pay for a ticket to see a movie, if you buy a digital copy or a DVD or a Blu-ray, the money that the studios get and the mere fact that you can quantify how much money a specific movie made tells the studio everything they need to know about what movies to make in the future. Whereas with a streaming service, you can't really quantify that beyond watch time, which might not be someone actually watching it. Maybe with upvotes and downvotes or a more nuanced rating system, but the streaming services have gotten rid of those or made them more useless over time anyway, so that's why the market needs to tell them what movies do well and which ones are just complete garbage. I'm going to wrap it up here by saying that if streaming services are too pricey, maybe that's a signal to go do something else. Spend your money on doing something in real life, you know? Binge real life, not TV, as I always say. Because my cancellation of streaming services wasn't even about the money. It was about time. Oh, another thing about individual purchases, I just remembered that the physical media people have a good point about spending the money on an individual movie or show will make you appreciate said individual movie or show a lot more than something that just happens to be available at no extra cost because of a recurring fee that you pay, or a ransom, as we should be calling it. And also, if you don't have as many options, you focus on quality of engagement with it, not quantity of consumption. But the point of all this is that pirating movies and shows is not going to fix this problem. It's just going to create new ones. It's going to encourage price hikes because it still costs them the same to run these services. And hey, I'm not against them offering streaming as an option, but I feel like everyone seems to forget that digital libraries are a thing where you can get the best of both worlds between physical media and streaming in the terms of convenient access on your TV without having to worry about a disc. And you still only have to pay one time and you have indefinite access to that specific movie or show. That, patience, and better time management is the real rebellion. You know what? Maybe the real rebellion should be going out and doing something that isn't watching movies and TV. You let me know in the comments what you prefer to do that isn't watching movies or TV. I'd love to hear what you have to say. Make sure to also give this video a like, subscribe for cultural commentary and rants from a man caught between generations. And last but certainly not least, feel free to join me at the Zillennial Nexus Points Discord, where we can keep this conversation going. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you soon.